Welcome, everyone. My name is Keen. I'm a research assistant professor at the University of Tennessee, and I work at the Global Computing Lab led by Dr. Michaela Toffer. Today, I'll present our recent work accepted to the International Conference on Computational Science, titled Energy Efficient Neural Network Training for Scientific Datasets with Advanced Similarity Analytics and Orchestration. So first of all, I want to highlight members of our group and collaborators working under this project. We at the Global Computing Lab collaborate with wonderful colleagues from various institutions, including Aragon National Labs and RIKEN. And this work is part of a bigger project called Analytics for Neural Networks, which is funded by the National Science Foundation. And main goal of our project is to design efficient workflows that reduce time and resources required to generate accurate and also efficient neural network architectures. So we are motivated by the rapid explosion of scientific data that's generated by experiments and also the increasing need to extract meaningful insights from it. This slide here highlights various scientific applications that produce large volumes of data, ranging from medical imaging and protein interactions to climate simulations. And as we can see, data is abundant, but unfortunately, insights are not. And so how do we actually make sense of all this large-scale data? So one powerful tool that we can turn to is neural networks. They are great at automatically learning patterns and also extracting useful information. So, for example, let's say we have images that show protein interactions. Then we can train a neural network to figure out things like what type of protein it is, how this protein is oriented or what is its shape, and even what its structure might look like. But here's the challenge. So we usually need custom neural networks for each dataset, and as it is usually said, there's no one-size-fits-all model. So figuring out the right neural network or the right architecture and the training strategy that actually works well for a specific dataset is something that is not trivial. So to tackle this challenge, we can turn to Neural Architecture Search, or NAS for short. And these are algorithms that can automatically discover neural network designs that may or may not work well for specific datasets. Now, there's a trade-off with NAS algorithms, and it is that they can be incredibly computationally intensive. So these algorithms often take huge amount of time and resources and of course energy to run and to complete. And again, this problem is exacerbated by this growing belief also that bigger models mean better performance, which we can actually see from this ever-growing pattern in this plot of the training compute of ML models over time. And this trend only gets worse now that we are kind of like transitioning to the new era of LLMs. So given all of these challenges, the question that we ask is, how can we make NAS workflows smarter and more efficient? And so to answer that question, we propose analytics for neural networks, or the A4NN workflow, which is designed to augment NAS algorithms by making them more modular, adaptable, and more efficient. So with analytics for neural networks, we break down NAS algorithms into multiple components. So these components include the training of the neural networks and then separate analytical engines that can make informed decisions about training, such as avoiding redundant computations or stopping training early. And so now I will briefly describe each of these components. So the first component in our workflow is, of course, the NAS algorithm itself. And so we are using NSGA-Net, which is an evolutionary algorithm which the way it works is that it starts with an initial population of neural networks and then gradually evolves them over generations. And what's interesting about NSGANet is that it doesn't just aim for very high accurate models, but it also tries to minimize the training cost in terms of flops. So it's balancing performance with also computational efficiency. The second component of our A4NN workflow is the predictive engine. And so the predictive engine essentially estimates how a model's accuracy will change in the next few training steps. And so with this information, we can do informed decisions about stopping early the training of a model for which the performance might have converged or stabilized. And so to do this, we used a parametric model. And what we do is we define a function that mimics the expected learning behavior of the learning curve. And then we train the model using the past performance data to predict what comes next. And so to illustrate this, here's an example with two learning curves. So the one on the left is a slow learner. It's a neural network that we classify as a slow learner, and the one on the right, it's a network that never really learns. And so in both cases, our predictive engine help us to estimate when or if the model will converge such that we can actually stop early if needed. And so again, to reiterate, we basically can decide to terminate the training of underperforming neural networks, or we can even generate more neural networks based on the ones that perform the best. The next component of the A4NN workflow is the similarity engine. And the similarity engine identifies neural networks with similar structures or configurations, in other words. And the goal of this component is to skip training for models that are essentially redundant and with the goal of saving compute time by avoiding duplicated training. And so to illustrate what's happening, here is an example of two neural networks that are generated by NSGANet. And basically how the NSGANet sees the neural network is as a graph. And so here basically vertices are computational units. And in our case, this will be convolutional layers or batch normalization or fully connected layers. And then the edges between the computational units are the connections between these layers. And so to identify this structural similarity, we leverage graph edit distances to kind of like find architectures that maybe differ by just very few operations. And in this example, in the slide, you can see that the two networks differ by only two edits. And in our experiments, they perform in terms of accuracy almost the same. And so using this information on structural similarity, we are able to augment the NAS algorithms to now make decisions of avoiding redundant neural networks. And at the same time, we can also promote a more diverse set of configurations across generations. The last component of our workflow and what brings all of these components together is Wilkins. And Wilkins is a workflow orchestrator that basically handles the data movement and the management of the execution of each component in A4NN. And so again, the way Wilkins works or the way that Wilkins executes our workflow is in the following way. So the first thing that we do is that it calls the NAS algorithm to generate a new neural network architecture. And then it executes or calls the similarity engine to identify whether there exists a similar architecture to the one that we're currently training. And if that's the case, then the training for the current neural network will terminate, and then we will proceed to the next one. Now, if that's not the case, then what we do is we execute our prediction engine. And the prediction engine is basically called after every training iteration or epoch, and is used to forecast the performance or the fitness of the neural network, right? Then to wrap this up, all of the results from these analytical engines are sent back to the NAS algorithm to basically decide whether to continue or to stop the training of a neural network. And so with Wilkins, we are able to coordinate the flow of data and also the tasks execution, as well as enabling this modularity between different components and being able to also have a seamless expansion of additional analytical tasks in the future. So now for this next set of slides, I will focus on our evaluation of the A4NN workflow on a real-world scientific data set. So to give you some context, our data actually comes from protein diffraction experiments that were carried out by our collaborators at RIKEN. What they do is that they use X-ray lasers to study protein diffraction patterns that can basically reveal insights about the structure of proteins, for example. The prediction tasks that we are interested on for the NAS algorithm is to be able to classify between different conformations, which basically conformation here refers to the different shapes that can be adopted by a particular protein. And so these experiments actually produce large image data sets with varying noise levels, depending on the beam intensity of the laser. And in our case, we are working with 3 different data sets, and each of these data sets are related to a different intensity level, going from low to medium and finally high. And so in our evaluation, we focus on, in the evaluation of our workflow, we focus on 3 key metrics. The first one was wall time, which is our proxy for the end-to-end energy usage of our workflow. Then we have flops, which is a proxy for per model energy cost, which we, of course, aim to reduce. And then accuracy, which basically we aim to match against the standalone NAS algorithms. And so for our results on wall time, we show here the time that it takes to run each workflow, measured in hours in the x-axis. And we tested different configurations for our workflow, but the 2 that we should focus on are comparisons between the original NSGA-Net NAS algorithm, which is the bars in orange, and then the most up-to-date A4NN workflow, which is the bars in blue. And so what we observe is that A4NN can actually achieve 2 times faster wall times compared to the standalone NSGA-Net. And this observation again is consistent across all the 3 datasets. Now, to evaluate energy efficiency, we measure the total training flops of the model by aggregating it across all of the architectures that we train during the NAS process. And here we find that, again, our augmented A4NN workflow, which is in blue, is capable of reducing the total compute cost by 50% across all datasets when we actually compare it to the standalone NAS in orange. And again, this demonstrates the energy efficiency gains of our approach compared to just running the NSDA net alone. And lastly, to demonstrate our improvements in both accuracy and also the flops, we present here in this slide the Pareto frontier of models for both A4NN and the standalone NSGA net. These plots basically show the best trade-off in terms of validation accuracy, which is on the y-axis, and the training cost in flops, which is on the x-axis. And basically what we observe here is that across all three datasets, our A4NN workflow is able to maintain the high accuracy that the standalone models also exhibit, while at the same time being able to reduce the compute cost of the NAS algorithm by approximately 50% as well. And so to summarize my talk, in this presentation, I showed our approach to designing a more modular and extensible workflow for NAS training. We showed the importance of decoupling NAS algorithms from the analysis for runtime efficiency. And we also demonstrated the impact of A4NN in reducing energy and training time by up to 50% for scientific data sets. And so with that, I conclude my presentation. Please feel free to reach out for questions and also visit our group's website that's included in the QR code here in this slide to learn more about our research. Thank you so much.